Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live. So, for those of you that have been following, you may know that we are in launch month here at the Launch Strategist. And essentially, we are reintroducing you to the brand this month. We are introducing you to some of our clients, some of our partners, and our awesome community, and a number of our service providers that we think that you will find useful. But, the most important thing is just to share value with you guys and give you some tips on how to launch to that next level of growth. So when I was thinking about, the season that we're in, we're coming into a time of austerity where businesses, individuals, communities are going to be really tightening the purse strings. And so I was thinking about how can people launch cost effectively? Now, when I think about launch marketing, one of the first things I think about is search engine optimization, because it is one of the most cost effective and efficient and effective ways to increase the visibility of your business and to get found online. So I couldn't think of anyone better than my next guest, Rob Stoubos, who is an SEO expert. So we're going to share with you some tips and insights on how to ensure that your business is found online. Welcome, Rob, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Katrina, and really appreciating the grand introduction. I think I'm quite a humble guy, so I've been doing it a long time.
Time.
Yeah, too long sometimes. No, I still love it. I still love it.
No, you guys are great at it.
Thank you.
So a bit about Odyssey New Media. So Rob, you are the CEO of Odyssey New Media, an award-winning UK-based digital agency who specialises in digital marketing and web development. Now, it's one of those things where there seems to be tons of companies like you online, but for me, it's so important to go on recommendation and reviews because there are so many. You want to find companies that really know what you're doing, and you guys definitely do, and that's testament with the caliber and quality of reviews you have on Google as well. So you've been doing this for over 16 years, so I guess a similar time that I've been in marketing, and you have your experience spans digital marketing and web development. You're very results driven, which I love. You have a results driven you're a results-driven individual with the skills required to successfully implement cross-channel digital campaigns that generate increased brand awareness, sales, and ROI, which is what we all want in business. It's what we all want. So Rob, it's been a long time, as you said. So what is your story, and how did you get here?
Right. So I'll try and give the short version, I guess, the concise version. Originally, I sort of, from university days, I actually studied computer science. So I knew I wanted to do something with computing. And I found during my time on my course that I was always drawn more to web anyway. So I kind of had a feeling I was going to do something working more with web digital than just sitting there coding all day during that time. And as it happened, a good friend of mine, he graduated a year before me, and he was working at a small firm in central Birmingham, and he needed someone he knew he could rely on. He knew I was coming up to graduation. So I would say it's quite funny that I've never really had a break from graduating. There's never been hardly any overlap. It's all been overlapped. So throughout my career, literally, I had an interview on the week of my graduation, 2 days prior to graduating, and then I was in employment on the Monday.
Wow.
And that was an introduction to SEO. And to be honest, whilst I'd been a student, growing up and in the early stages with Google and the earlier search engines before that, I never really gave it any thought that there'd be, sort of algorithms behind what order the results come out with. You almost don't as a normal user until you sort of start looking into it and questioning it. So it was kind of an eye-opener seeing the factors involved. And I think I was in that role for about 2.5 years. Then I moved on to a larger agency in North Birmingham at the time. I think I was their fifth hire, and within a 3-year window, they went from about from when I joined to about 30 plus people. So that was quite a big expansion.
Yeah.
And during that time, I got to cut my teeth on some big blue chips. Like, I mean, I can say that, you know, I can say, I probably sound like I'm throwing names out, but like Peugeot was one, and Nectar Card, you know, I did a big strategy, you know, went down to London to meet them. And so that was, I kind of established myself a bit as, I suppose, the SEO go-to in the company during that time. And because I'm a bit of a self-professed geek, and I deep dive on stuff, you know, I'd invest a lot of my own time researching and trying different things out, even some of my own little pet projects, playing around with Google, and especially. And then after that, I think maybe that's where, you know, I differ and the company differs, is that I had experience working in-house as well. So it hasn't all been agency side. So I think that was around sort of 2011. By that stage, I'd moved to a company called BioCare, who were a big supplements manufacturing company. And part of the reason was I was still doing SEO, but I was the digital manager. So I got to manage cross-channel. So at one point, I think they had 3 or 4 website properties, and I was doing their SEO, but I was also doing the social media, the email marketing, the content marketing. They weren't doing any AdWords, so I convinced them to give me some budget. And I think by the time I left on that front as well, or SEO and that combined, we were generating over the main brand, which was BioCare, over about 300K a year from probably an investment of probably about a sixth of that. So they were getting really good ROI. I mean, that was the difference, you know, by being able to be consistent. And I guess, and during that time, and I'd always wanted to do my own agency or something, you know, consulting or something. And during that time, just magically, thank God, I ended up getting clients, and past colleagues had some clients. And again, I suppose they knew I was really passionate about it, and kind of built my client base to the point where I could make the break. And for the last 9 years, I've been working on Odyssey. So that's the short version. I'll try to sort of condense it a little bit.
That's great. So the name Odyssey, why did you name the agents Odyssey? It's a good name, but I'm intrigued by it.
Well, I mean, you can probably tell from my surname, I'm part Greek. So I think I'd read the Odyssey and the Iliad by Homer, you know, and I always like the word, and it also kind of represents a journey based on the story, and marketing and or digital marketing and having, you know, a business and trying to grow it through marketing methods and online and through digital is a journey in itself. So there's kind of undercurrents of that, although we don't play too much on the meaning behind it. And it is a memorable word. And I think at the time, at the time, the Odyssey New Media bit, I thought media, because I didn't want to be pigeonholed only on SEO. I thought we want to be able to offer a few other services and bring those in, although SEO is the main one. So I thought media is a good, it's a way of, it didn't say marketing or development. It's a bit of a broader umbrella term. And there was already an Odyssey Media magazine, I think, in America. So I just put the new bit, and that was how it kind of rolls off the tongue. And that's how we developed the brand. And obviously, the other thing is a quick tip for anyone who is selecting a business. It's always good to see if you've got to try and get something unique. So I tried to make sure it was unique, at least here in the UK. So we weren't treading on any toes there from a legal standpoint as well, because that can be, a lot of people select names and then realize they've chosen the same name or as somebody else. So thankfully we've sort of, you know, we've got it copyrighted now and everything. So
Excellent. So let's go back to basics for a minute. What is SEO and how has it evolved over the years?
Okay, so in a nutshell, SEO or search engine optimization is where you're trying to optimize factors that Google and the other search engines look for. You're trying to tick as many boxes as possible, and some factors have higher weightings than others. Um, and you're trying to, by doing that, you'll be looked upon more favorably, and therefore you've got more chance of, when people search for certain search terms, of ranking higher, and being on, page one ideally, or moving your rankings wherever they might be higher and higher over time.
Yeah.
So that's how I would best describe SEO in its essence. And it also sits usually underneath the ads on page one on the search engines, and a lot of users will sort of scroll past there. In terms of the how it's evolved, I'd say, Google in particular and the other search engines have improved their algorithms. So in the early days, what I call the good old days of SEO, there were less factors involved, and they weren't as refined. The search engines weren't at detecting kind of spammy methods, like keyword stuffing and just getting any old links. It was much easier. Although I've always kind of tried to avoid those types of methods, because there was still, even back then, there were some triggers for being penalized. So I think there's always that temptation to think, I'll just take shortcuts. So, which is something I've tried to avoid. I've never really done since the very early days, really. Once you learned that they were starting to bring these what they call algorithm updates, and they still do several broad updates to this day, and then updates in between there. So they're so clever now that I think you have to do SEO, what we call proper SEO, which is quality content, quality inbound relationships from other sites, good SEO, good social media, good blog writing. There are still do's and don'ts, but it's all, the move has all been towards the end user, because Google used to find, sometimes for main searches on big competitive terms, that half the sites would be very spammy, not great looking. So they've almost kind of brought in more factors. I think the CEO of Google in 2019, he was sort of being interrogated by the US government about sort of, whether Google scoped their search engine results. But what was interesting was he actually sort of slipped out and was quoted as, I'm paraphrasing now, but he was quoted as saying there are 200 plus factors. That was along those lines. He actually used the figure of 200. So, and those are on-site and off-site factors, indicators off-site, like social media, links from other sites. There are a lot of indicators that Google use. But on the whole, those, where they're up to now, and in terms of methodology, it's kind of finer details. So as long as you're doing everything for the end user, the methodology or the approach has been quite consistent, or at least from our perspective, and we're still able to achieve results with similar methods, although we make refinements when these changes happen. The other thing I would add is the introduction of smartphones as well. Mobile usage. So Google ranks mobile first now. So if people have still got websites that are really slow or not responsive, they're going to struggle more than someone who's got a website that's fast on mobile and is responsive. So there are all of these kind of things you have to think about now, which 15 years ago when I started, smartphones weren't a thing, and internet usage on mobiles wasn't a thing. So there's just more factors involved at play, and there's still different weightings within that 200. But it's important to try and tick as many of those boxes as possible. So that's kind of how it's evolved. It's become more complex, really. But in essence, if you go into it with a customer first mindset, you will get a level of improvement. That's what we do and what we encourage our customers to do with us. You know, it's a team effort when we're working on campaigns with our customers.
Great. Thanks for that, Rob. So, you know, some people say that actually it's enough to have a strong social media presence, a strong social media following, and they don't necessarily need a website. Increasingly, I'm seeing founders or entrepreneurs who have a strong following on the internet, on social media, may even be making good money, but they don't have a website. What do you say to that?
I think obviously, you know, if they've got a large audience and they're already generating money, they've always got the choice to stick with that. There's a couple of sort of reasons why I'd sort of disagree. One is very often they're running on other people's platforms like YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram are some of the most popular ones for YouTubers or for entrepreneurs who are building a following to sell their products or services. But the problem is they're then beholden to the people who control those platforms. So if the rules change or they say something they don't like and they break the guidelines, like we've seen people be deplatformed for various reasons over the years, probably within the last 5 or 6 years, for whether it's, you know, topics they might comment on, language, views on certain things. It's not as free for them to speak their minds necessarily. Whereas, and I've kind of noticed a shift in some of the YouTubers and social media people I follow, where they have got a website because it's adding that security net. So, and they encourage people to become at least subscribers, so that if they were deplatformed, they've then got a website where people can still pick up their content directly, and they can and very often they couple that with so for some of these providers of information, or for example, or premium content, they use the website as the premium content entry point, and they gives them more control, and they can, you know, it reinforces their brand. So that's one of the main reasons separate. And the other reason I would say is so it can kind of enhance the branding and showcase maybe their full set of services that they can't always get across. And the only other thing I would add is that on these platforms, they're all detached from each other. So even if you've got 2 or 3 platforms and good following on all of them, you've then got to pay maybe for some expensive software to pull all the information and to understand the metrics. Whereas if you've got your website and that's your primary hub, you can put something like analytics on there for free, Google Analytics, sorry, for the audience, for free, essentially. And you can, and if you're funneling everything, if you're using your website more as your hub and where you're pushing people to, you've got a centralized area where you can track things, you know, in a more central way. And then, and you've got control over your own website. From one day you can have, you know, the homepage can be bright yellow, tomorrow it can be bright blue, which again, you can't always do on these other platforms. So it gives you more control and it can enhance brand. So that would be my sort of counter argument to
absolutely. And I'm a little bit old fashioned in the sense that if I'm looking for a supplier and they don't have a website, immediately it's a red flag for me. I immediately don't think you're as serious or as professional, even though that may not be true. Because you're always, when you're looking for a supplier, you're always looking for trust signals. And for me, having a website as an established business is a negative trust signal. I guess the other thing is you cannot do online SEO for a social media page, can you? Only for
I can kind of use a quick story. There are some indicators. So we had a video done about 5 years ago, like an animated video, sort of as an overview with a little SEO angle to it. And the guy who sort of made that, we sort of co-managed that production with them. They went and uploaded it to their portfolio on their YouTube channel. So we had to, so if you search for Odyssey, it was their channel showing, not ours. And I didn't know they'd done that. and it was kind of too late at that point, and I think they'd moved on, so we couldn't get them to remove it. So we had to do an upload and then use the factors, the trigger factors within, say, I think it was YouTube in this case. So things like likes, views, comments, subscribers. So there are ranking factors within these platforms and do's and don'ts that sort of fall more into social media that can get your ranking higher or get you more visibility. But you can't get into the code on these platforms. You don't have quite as much control as you would for your own site in terms of on the platform itself. So it's a little bit more restricted in that sense. And also in some, depending on the field that people are in, it can be more competitive than on a search engine as well, the competitiveness levels for what they're trying to be found for on some of these platforms. So it can actually be easier in some cases to start with the website and start with SEO and then maybe think about your social. It varies on different with different sectors and with different products and services, of course. But and obviously I'm not saying don't do one and do the other, but it's SEO is a kind of key channel for most businesses, and you quite rightly said. And I think, I mean, I'm 39, 40, and I'm of the same mindset. I do look. Usually the website's the first point of call. Then I'll look to see if they've got social channels. Maybe for a younger audience, like sub 30, sub 25. But then again, you're kind of, 39 plus or 50 plus is your more disposable income audience. So, it might be another 10, 20 years before that becomes less of a thing. So you've kind of got to shoot for where people with disposable income to pay for your products and services are. And unfortunately, our generation and up, we're gonna make those qualified viewpoints on whether they've got a site or not. So that is another reason to have a website. So I agree with you on that completely.
Yeah. So I am a fan of YouTube. I do really like YouTube. And I guess because it's owned by Google, is it correct that it's the number 2 search engine in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, some months it's had more searches than Google. It's in the past I have seen, I couldn't quote you the exact numbers, but they have had some peak months where they've had more searches than Google. So it's a video sharing, video subscription platform, but it's got a search bar on it. So it is a search engine. It's a video search engine, if you want to call it that. So and there are algorithmic factors. The other thing is as well, especially with it being a Google product, is if you search for certain information searches, Google, obviously the search engine part of it, it will sometimes present YouTube videos when it's trying to, especially for Q&A questions. Like if I search for, I mean, I'll give you one example. I've got this really annoying weed on my drive at home, and I've been looking for methods on how to sort of, finish it off. And as I've been searching, I've got actual YouTube videos appearing within, even though I'm searching on Google. So you can get some extra shelf space, particularly by having YouTube. So there is this kind of what you call YouTube SEO or video SEO element of it as well. Yeah.
Excellent. So these days people want a quick fix when it comes to marketing. SEO really isn't that. But let's talk about why it's still such an important channel to invest in.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say they should definitely consider it, strongly consider it. Essentially because for many people, especially for new customers, when they're early in the funnel of their buying decision and they're doing research, or, I want to buy this, or I want a service, I want that service. They will commence it with a Google search. So if you can have that footprint early on and have that visibility, you're kind of picking up people earlier in their buying cycle. So it's kind of like being, and obviously if you're higher up, it's kind of like if you walk in the real world sense, if you walk into a supermarket and a product has bright packaging and it's at the top of the shelf, or it's in your eye line, you're more likely to at least pick it up and have a look versus versus the rest of the competition that's out there. So that would be one reason. The other thing, as I've sort of made a note of, is it's the potential for traffic growth. So with paid ads, let's say on Google, for example, there's only a limited number of spaces.
Yeah.
And if you're in a competitive sector, as new people come in, that pushes the price up. So, and fair play to Google, they've created a kind of bidding war system, and it can be really competitive, even in sectors that you wouldn't think would be that expensive. So sometimes you can be priced out of the market. Whereas SEO, if you're doing it well, you've actually got the opportunity to leapfrog at people who have been established, bigger competition, who've got bigger budgets. So it can be an in for some newer brands and startups if they can do it consistently, especially in the first year, and also the scope for expansion. So if you're generating content and you're doing the other bits and you're raising the authority of the site, you can keep getting more. The traffic potential is, in theory, limitless. For most, you can write about new topics. You can be pulling in more and more rankings, what they call long tail, when the phrases they're searching for are more than 2 or 3 words. Specific Q&A stuff, that there's just, you can keep increasing your traffic once you hit there's a certain tipping point of authority. So it's a good growth channel compared to some of the other channels where you can be limited by budget and the competition that's out there.
Yeah. And I think that it's SEO is just one of those marketing activities. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So it may take a while to gain traction, but once you have a great piece of content that does well, it just keeps going, and it's forever in the ethernet. And so over time, you're just building collateral. You're just building and building and building. And so for me, that's why when we're doing launch campaigns, SEO is a staple, because our motto is all about launching legacy, and it's about the long term and about doing things today that are going to reap benefits for years to come. And so for us, it's an essential channel. Because it has so many benefits. It positions an organization, it's good for rankings, it gives credibility. There are just so many benefits to it long term. Yes, you have to wait to see those benefits, but there are so many benefits long term. So yeah, really, really important channel, and we always recommend it. So what would you say are the benefits of hiring an agency as opposed to doing SEO yourself?
For me, specifically with SEO, I think an agency like ours, we probably bring consistency and process, which can save a lot of time and get results a bit quicker. So, very often we're given a set amount of time to do SEO. That might be 1 day up to several days a month. And we have the processes, we're able to maximize that time. Whereas a business owner and an individual, if they're trying to do it on their own from scratch, and if they've got no knowledge or very limited knowledge to start with, or they're trying to learn as they go along, it can be quite challenging, because very often a business owner, or even just someone who's an employee, have already got another role to do. They're not a dedicated marketer. And also we've already curated and streamlined our processes. So we've already done the trial and error to get to that stage. So whereas, and I can say for myself, I went down quite a few blind alleys, but I've kind of grown up with Google, and we're kind of on top of it, whereas it can be quite challenging to stay on top of the algorithm updates. And we hear stories where people were fined for, or they had some SEO, they stopped it, they were fined for a couple of years, a new algorithm update came along, and because they're not monitoring it, it's not their job. They were like, well, what do I do? What's happened? You know, and on the odd occasion, you know, people have seen their traffic, their SEO drop a lot because they haven't been doing it consistently. So a lot of our customers are, you know, we often say you need like a minimum of a year to see that early attraction.
Yeah.
But I'd say on average, you know, they're probably beyond that year. They probably stay, you know, do it for 4 or 5 years, because at that point they start to see doing it consistently kind of pays off. So consistency and a process, really, I think, are the key things that an agency like ours can bring. Yeah,
absolutely. So ROI is tricky sometimes. It's that thing that everyone wants to know before we invest in a channel. What return on investment can we expect? What revenue attribution can we commit to, can we assign to this channel? And it can be tricky to build that case with things like SEO, content marketing, PR. Nonetheless, I still feel it is essential, because you can show uplift for all the benefits that we've spoken about. But what I liked especially about working with you is that your ROI calculator. I love the tool. I absolutely think it should be trademarked and sold separately. But yeah, it's amazing. So talk to us about that ROI calculator.
Yeah, and obviously for the benefit of the audience, we can't really show them, but so they'll have to sort of picture it a little bit. I mean, I'm glad you said that, because quite a few people have said to us, you know, you should license this, develop it as a piece of software, and I think a lot of marketers and business owners would. I mean, I've been told that, you know, I would. I mean, we'd probably been using that for 10 or more. I've been using it since before I sort of refined it over time. To get to that point. So what we try and ROI can be challenging. So, but because in the past I used to get asked about it a lot, I thought, how can I, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but how can I use the data I have available, or how can we use the data we have available to try and forecast or scenario build what we might be able to achieve based on rankings being achieved. And so what we do is we do keyword research, just for the benefit of the audience. I know we've been through it, Katrina, but so we do keyword research. We because we're a Google partner, we're able to extract for individual keywords. We're able to get an idea what the average search volumes are every month, and then from that you can select your targets, what you want to rank for. But then we sort of go beyond that and say, right, let's say we had a phrase that had 1,000 searches. If I get 10%, if I'm top 5 and I get 10% of the people, 10% of that traffic, that's 100 visits to my site. Then if my site converts at, you know, 10%, then I'm getting 10 conversions. And if I know what my average order value is, I can work. So you can start to scenario build best and worst case scenarios, and then you can go, right, okay, so I'm paying my agency this, or I'm paying this on ads, and it's like you can see the likelihood of what the return might be before you sort of venture. So we sort of, I think we did it as a month. We always do it as a month one activity, but also it's so that it's got to be an agreed thing with a business, what those targets are, because I could select which terms I think are most relevant. But then if we do 6 months work and then that 6 month period we realize we picked the wrong terms, it looks bad on us. Not that happens, because we always want it to be a team agreed thing. So but it's a great way of, at least gives you that early assurance, and it can be refined later as well. Sometimes targets change, businesses change service offerings, or new products come along, and we can always add to it as well. So, but as an initial piece, it means that we know what keywords we want to integrate, and then that feeds through to the content development, the types of sites we want to get links from. I mean, some customers, once we've done that keyword research kind of ROI process, sometimes they don't they had a service that was very low down in the pecking order, but then they realize how much potential there is, and they bring it more to the fore, and it can change their business, and they change their
really
business model
can.
sometimes, just by knowing that information, and it's based on what people actually search for as well.
So I absolutely love it. For me, it's one of your differentiators, and it's one of the main things that were like actually that made me think, actually I do want Odyssey New Media in the legacy builders directory, and I want to continue to work with you guys, because for me that's like such a thing. There's been so many moments where it's been, if only I could see, or scenario build in a better way, and there you have it just there. So yeah, it's a really, really great tool.
We've got a little add-on that we may add, or if we ever do develop it, is I can share it with you, where you've got existing traffic. So if you've got an analytics, the next evolution would be, if I take my scenario but also base it on what I'm getting right now, you can see what the historic data is, and then you can say, right, if I increase it by 10%, what does that look like? And so a bit of AI behind. So that's where we might kind of see about bolting it into something like a Google Analytics, so you can use what actually you're getting right now as well. So that's kind of we're always thinking how to evolve it.
The things us marketers enjoy, right? Playing with. So it's
I love data. I mean, it just still fascinates me even to this day, how people search and what they search for as well, and then what the potential can be. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. It really is. And there's always so many surprises, and Google Analytics is a treasure trove, because there's so many times I'll look at it and I think, I had no idea there was traffic coming from that country. I had no idea this page was showing up. People like this content on this page. I had no idea. It's an utter treasure trove. And then it helps you get better over time, because you're making informed decisions based on real data, based on what's happening, not based on what you think, not based on social media likes, but actually based on data. So it's so important, so important. And I think as we, move into these times where I guess marketers are having to be more accountable, where businesses are wanting to see more return, having an affinity with the data and what's actually happening in real life and being able to report on that is fundamental. So really, really important. So when it comes to SEO, what are the biggest mistakes you see companies make?
I think the biggest mistake sometimes, and again, I know everyone's got their budgets. I think sometimes some businesses can be a bit too tentative, and there's sometimes businesses that have bigger budgets, but no marketing is guaranteed to bring an ROI. So when you sort of, from our perspective, we're honest enough to tell people that, they need to look at it as a minimum as a year's investment. And for some people, that's a stretch too far in terms of commitment. Despite, what we price at, but we're quite affordable for our experience levels. But whether it was a lot of money or not, if it's done properly, and again, if they've got something like an ROI calculator so they can forecast that, if you've got that data available, I think to be apprehensive, some businesses are just maybe a bit too apprehensive.
I agree with you. I agree 100%.
But it can be, I'd say in most cases, it's actually a very, very small investment versus what the return potential. So otherwise, I think also the other mistake within the SEO sort of activity is on the link building side. And we always have this conversation, which again isn't always an easy conversation, is we'll have our management fee. And as we're doing link building during that management, some opportunities, like if you found, let's say you're a business that does gifts for the home, and you find a home and garden magazine that's got high authority, and you want to get a link, you want to have that site pointing to your site from an article. So we would do outreach,
Yeah.
and that site might say, fine, I'll put your article on my site, but as an admin charge, we'll charge £50, £100. And we'll have these conversations with our clients, but sometimes they're a bit reluctant. If they're already seeing some results, they're a bit reluctant to sort of reinvest some of that ROI back into buying some links, especially. That's a difficult area. I mean, but what I would say to a business, if they're investing in marketing or ads or links, is if it's a limited company, especially, you can kind of write that off against your corporation tax anyway, if it's paid for directly. So what we'll do is we don't charge them a pot of money for the links part of it. We'll present that, and then it's up to them if they want to put the budget to pay for those content placements or directories or whatever it might be. And at the end of the year, they can write it off as marketing spend anyway against their corporation tax. So they're sort of not really losing out, because it brings down their bill at the end of the year, really. But it's going to help them improve their SEO. So I'm, as you can probably tell, or the viewers can tell, I'm quite straight talking with our customers, and I'm a business owner, so I understand where they're coming from, and very often, once we have those discussions, they'll kind of see that point of view. But some business owners are a bit, it's easy to sit on what you've got and think, well, I'm happy with what I've got. But the problem is Google's changing, so you kind of have to still be doing some ongoing investment to maintain and grow. It's hard. It's like, I equate it to going to the gym. If you're working on a certain muscle group, or if I'm working on my shoulders or my arms down in the gym, if I just stop, eventually my muscles are going to shrink. So SEO is similar to that. You've got to, if I grow the weight, if I invest more time, if I invest more weight, I might get my muscles bigger, or I can choose to stay at that level. So it's a similar kind of, as an analogy, it's a little bit like bodybuilding, SEO. Well, I suppose you can equate bodybuilding, that methodology, to a lot of things in life. If you invest more, you tend to get more out. You tend to see more performance. So that's the only thing, really. I would say that's the biggest mistake some businesses make, is where they want to grow, but they're not necessarily reinvesting to grow back into SEO.
And I think that's an issue that we see across the board with businesses that have a degree of success, because there is this risk taking at the beginning to get to that level of success. And then when you reach that level of success, there's almost a fear that sets in that says, actually, no, I don't want to risk losing this position. And long term, it's how companies fall off. And it's why, Blockbusters doesn't exist anymore. HMV doesn't exist anymore, because you got comfortable here. It felt safe, but actually the riskiest thing you ever did is to stop investing and stop growing. And one thing I would say about this time that we're going into, where, budgets may be tighter, is something, marketers know, is that during times of recession or difficult financial times, it's not the time to stop investing in marketing. If anything, you push to increase it, because you have a higher chance of success, because that's what most companies are going to be doing. They're going to be decreasing spend. So actually, during difficult financial times, it's easier for you to rise up the ranks, because everybody's pulling back. So a little secret, a little tip of the trade for you is, do not cut marketing spend during times of austerity. Do the opposite as everybody else if you can. Would you agree with that, Rob?
I do, yeah. I think sometimes you've got to double down. If the market's shrinking, you've got to compete harder for those remaining customers that have that disposable income at times, or at the very least maintaining the spend rather than retracting the investment. Again, very easy for us to say, but we've, when we've seen it firsthand, and how it impacts people's results when they do invest and when they don't invest. So I've seen it, I've seen it all, really, over the years.
Absolutely. And I think also, as business owners, practicing what we preach, because I know for me, over the next few months, my marketing spend is going to go up. not
Same for
down.
us.
So yeah, do you know what I mean? So it's also because we know this, we've seen this so many times. It's a no-brainer for us.
Well, I'm gonna tell a little secret, or I may have told you before, Katrina, but we've been so busy that our SEO has been quite minimal because we haven't, and we've been busy servicing our clients, and it's the old phrase, the chef doesn't eat. That applies to you can apply to your own business sometimes, especially in marketing. When you're busy, you're too busy to do your own, invest in your own marketing. So from this month, for the next 6 months, we've actually allotted a day or two within our internal resource to refresh all our SEO. And I mean, I did a lot of investment in the early years when we weren't as busy. And that's given us that platform. But at the same time, because for those reasons we said, and because we're still in a recession, we are technically, as an economy, we're in a recession. It's and part of it's just for me as a marketer, it's again like that, practicing what we preach. I just want to give everything a refresh anyway. It's been a while now, so but probably beyond that, I think at this point now we're gonna have our minimum level, no matter how busy it's, whether I've got to spend some of my weekend doing writing articles, and if one of my team members is away and they were tasked to do it, I'll just have to sometimes you just got to you've got to make that investment as a business owner as well. So I said to my guys, allocate the time. Funnily enough, I've actually asked one of my most experienced guys to manage me because I'm doing multiple roles, which is what I said on that question earlier. So I said, look, I don't want to manage for Odyssey, you manage it. And if you want me to write nice long form articles and do link building, just I'll block it out. So I've asked him to manage me, which will I'm kind of worried now. I'm kind of worried how if the power's going to go to his head a little bit, but I've given him full license to sort of instruct me on what he wants me to do as well. So
no, well, thanks so much for that, Rob. So much insight in there. So last but definitely not least, if there's someone on here that wants to do SEO, has been convinced by some of the things we've been talking about that actually it's a channel they need to invest in, how can they work with you?
I would just say, please get in touch via our website. It's www.Odyssey New Media. Again, it's ODYSSEY, the Odyssey word. Sometimes it's a tricky one to spell. Odyssey New Media, or give us a call on our landline. It's 0121 439 5450. Usually if I'm in the office, either I'll answer it or one of my colleagues will, and they'll be able to kind of, put you on to me if you ask for me specifically. If I'm at a meeting, they will often take a message and I'll get back to people if I'm not available at that moment in time as well.
Okay, so just as a recap, because I'm just going to type this in the comments. So it's odysseynewmedia.com.
Yeah.
Okay. odysseynewmedia.com, and your telephone number again for the business.
Yeah, it's 0121.
Let's get that in here. Oh, it stopped working, Rob, but I will absolutely post it in afterwards.
That's okay.
I'll absolutely get it off the website and post it afterwards. But thank you so much for your time,
Rob. Thank you, Katrina.
The time to even speak. I know that you're a busy man, so I really appreciate the fact that you've taken a whole hour out of your day to come and chit chat with us.
I appreciate the invite anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we will absolutely speak soon. Everyone that has joined live or will catch the replay, we really appreciate you watching. Before we go, I'll give you 60 seconds to drop any questions in the chat if you do have any. If I don't see any questions, just to let you know that we have another live tomorrow on how to increase the value of your business with some M&A specialists and business brokers tomorrow. So that's another good live that you may want to catch. Details of that will be on our page. All month, we've got tons of content with you. I've kind of done a 360, kind of went a bit AWOL with my lives, and now I'm kind of bombarding you with live content. But I hope you're finding it beneficial. If you want to work with us, if you're thinking of launching a new venture, wanting to grow the venture that you have, or even thinking about exiting in the business and want to prepare for that transition, then do give us a shout. If you haven't visited our new site, visit our new site at thelaunchstrategist.com. We love it and we hope you do too. But not only that, most importantly, it's got a ton of free content on there as well. And we are just constantly adding to that content on the site as well. And I'll be talking to Rob as well about our SEO as well. So that's next on my agenda, Rob. So expect a call from me now that the website has finally been built. But I don't see any questions. So thank you so much for joining. Rob, thanks for your time, and we will absolutely speak soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Katrina. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.